welcome to our Through the Eyes of a Survivor podcast. This is our very first episode that Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence will start, and I am Tara Woodlee, the board president. Next to me is Megan Lee, our vice president, and then Midori Davidson, our treasurer, and our secretary, Audria Maltsberger.
Right.
Yay. Okay. And right now is October, and it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are focusing on relationships with a narcissist and what that's like. So that's our topic today. And so I was thinking, to get us started, basically just kind of discussing exactly what is a narcissist. And Megan, I think you would probably be the best one with a really good definition of that.
Well, off the hip, I would say narcissists are people who believe that the world revolves around them. They don't really see anyone else's points of view. They don't believe that rules apply to them. They apply to other people, but not to them. They're very manipulative and very domineering and possessive of the people in their lives. And if they can't control them and manipulate them, they don't have a use for them. So they'll be really quick also to cut someone out of their lives if they can see that their manipulation is not working on them. They like to surround themselves with people who stroke their egos and lift them up. And if they don't do that, again, they don't have a purpose for them.
No, absolutely. And it's a continuous cycle. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell us that there's three stages, idealization and devaluation and rejection. So when you're in that kind of a relationship, it doesn't matter who it is. It can be like your parents or even your siblings or your children. It doesn't have to be like the specific love relationship you're in, right?
Absolutely.
So, so Midori, what are you thinking about, like that idealization process with a narcissist?
It could come in many forms, actually. When you think of idealization, the first thing that pops in my mind is idolize. They want to put you in a position where they're God to you. So even your posture is different. So they want your posture to be where you're looking towards them. They want your thought process to be where you are codependent and leaning more towards dependency on them. And they'll use phrases like, if it weren't for me, you would be here. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have this. Or if it weren't for me, you wouldn't know this, that, or the other. So if there's any way that you could feel small, that's where they would like to place you, in a very minute type of situation.
No, absolutely. And it's very easy to be in that kind of relationship and to allow them to make you feel small, because a lot of us, especially women, we want to please, right? So in my head, it was always like, you're trying to please this person, not that they're really trying to belittle you. You're trying to become like what they have in their heads you should be. And it gets you caught up and wrapped up in it in ways that you can't even imagine before you realize that the problem is really them, right?
Well, in these relationships with narcissists, they don't start out that way. They start out very kind and loving and charming to everyone around them. And so you fall for that. And oftentimes other people around you fall for it too. But those other people around you start to see the narcissism typically before we do. And so we get suckered in though because they know that manipulation technique so well that we get fooled into believing that they're these loving, kind human beings, and we fall in love with them, and that's when they change.
Right.
It's like the flip of a switch.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I've got her hooked now, so now I can actually start being me.
Well, but it's also not like it happens it's so methodical,
Yes.
Yes.
and you don't realize it's happening, and then they can turn it around and you turn it off and then do something really good.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're sucked in, and they show you all of these good qualities and try and focus on, well, he's a good father, or he's a good guy, and look how good he is his family, look how successful he is. But really, he can turn it on and off, and you don't realize it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I also think too that it's usually a situation or a scenario that causes that switch to flip. When I think about my mother having a mental breakdown and my grandmother voluntold her that she would raise me, all of a sudden the grandmother switch flipped. She became the parents, and now she has the control. And narcissists feed off of control. This is my playground. You're going to play according to my rules, and that's it. So when you're in a position where you can't say anything, that's the most fun. When you're not empowered, when your power is taken away to not say anything, that's where you begin to see it enlarging.
Well, in a narcissist is also going to systematically separate you from your friends and family,
Absolutely.
so that you become dependent on them, and so that they can further try to manipulate you. Their goal is to control you. And so that's part of the process too, is trying to separate you from your friends and family. And at first you feel like, oh, my friends and family just don't understand. They don't see the person that I see. And so that's one of the pieces of it, is that we'll start to see is that separation from your friends and family. That's all a part of the manipulation process, to isolate you so that they can control you.
Or to manipulate relationships between you and your family. They'll put you here and put everybody else here. Or if you don't give me the attention I deserve, you're here, they're up here.
Yeah.
So there's always an agenda, and manipulation is definitely part of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, in general, they tend to manipulate you into these scenarios with quickly bringing on like intimacy.
Yes.
And suckering you
Yes.
into that intimate relationship where they make you feel so special, like you are the only one. And so once they have you in that situation, then you're so stuck back, like what you were saying. Then it's hard to tell your family, but you don't see what I see, because they establish that intimacy so quickly, and they prey upon people that want that intimacy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Or they'll use material things to create intimacy if they don't know how to be intimate with you. They will use money and gifts and sprees, if you will, to create a false sense of intimacy, because they don't know how to be intimate. They don't know how to actually love someone. So they're going to create it like it's a movie.
But they also are really good at listening.
Yeah.
And learning about what your insecurities are,
Yes.
so that then they can turn it around and use it against you.
Gaslight
That's
you.
crazy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
part of that
Incredible. It's such a
devaluation,
gift.
right?
Yeah.
That they not a gift, but
Well,
that
it's a
they-
gift that
it
we're
is a
giving
gift.
them,
Right,
to
but
give
they
them
turn it
that piece of
against
information
us.
about us, because we think that we love them and can trust them. And then they flip it around and they use it to hurt us and to devalue us and to gaslight us. And it's hard, because now I remember when my ex was doing it to me, and I was like, oh my God, like I told you these things because I loved you, not for you to use it to hurt me. And it
Mhm.
also made me really leery of letting anyone ever know intimate things like that about me again,
Right.
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 which I don't like.
And it's usually the most intimate details that that
Yes.
you've held on to, and you feel like they've established that trust with you,
Yes.
and it's those intimate details that they turn around and use against you.
That's why
Yes.
I'm also hypersensitive in terms of certain words that I hear.
Mm.
Certain words are a trigger, where I get, for lack of a better term, violent. Because if I can't smack that out of you, I need to walk away. So I am dealing with narcissistic people in general. I am very well aware of what triggers me, and it's usually a tonality along with certain verbiage that puts you down and tries to belittle you or to make you think that you don't know.
Mm.
When in all honesty you do. You're trying to figure out how to react to it because in that moment pieces of you are starting to disintegrate and you're quickly trying to grab onto them. So how can I grab onto me and still try to protect me? And
Mm.
so for me, when I'm in a situation like that, the first thing I do is I get angry. And I've recently learned in my therapy that anger is the most caring emotion. It cares about you more than you do.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. So, going along with that, do you ladies feel like when you were like in your abusive relationship, like they used the sexual intimacy against you in those
Oh,
ways?
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, for how it was used against me was if he had sex with other women, we need to take a biblical sabbatical.
Mm, 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 mm.
We need to take a
Oh,
biblical
Lord.
sabbatical. We need to do a 3 week to a month cleanse. But you're watching porn tapes on my VCR and you're jacking off. But we need to take a sabbatical. When after a while, that's when I began to piece together, oh, you're getting it elsewhere, but you
Mhm.
don't want me to know. So you stay away from me until you decide that I'm worth your intimacy, that I'm worth your time. So it was more about time than
Mhm.
intimacy for me because if I'm not worth your time, if I am not worth being in your space,
Yeah.
then why the fuck are you in mine?
Mhm. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, to put it bluntly, yeah.
Why in the fuck are you here? I mean, really.
Well,
Absolutely.
part of with mine and my experience is that like he very much played upon like being very aggressive in a sexual nature into the fact that he had to be the best.
Mm.
And then he had to have the justification all the time of every time had to be the best time. And if it wasn't, then, there's my issue, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's constantly wanting you to feed his ego. And then if you can't feed that ego, then you're the problem.
Yeah.
And then he'd seek it somewhere else.
Well, see,
Yeah.
but that's the thing is, there the manipulation. Why were we not enough?
Yeah.
I love you, I want to be intimate with you, but yet you have to go outside of the relationship because we're not enough to feed the ego. It's like an empty pit
Mhm.
that they
Mhm.
are constantly having to pour into, and they make us feel like we're the problem because they he makes us feel like, or they make us feel like we're not enough.
Well,
Yeah.
another reason why you feel you're not enough is because you're constantly pouring into their bullshit.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I
So
was
the
thinking.
more you empty out, the more you begin to feel worthless because you have no energy for you.
Right.
When
Yeah.
I have to get ready for work to put on makeup to cover the bruises you put on my face, then that signifies my worthlessness because now I have to cover who I am up.
Right.
You
Mhm.
know, if a male neighbor spoke to me and said good morning, then this jackass will come out with a hunter's rifle and tell them not to speak to me. But then we need to have a 3 week to a month sabbatical before we can have intimacy. So I decided I would try it, that little regimen. And I said, I've been doing a Bible study. You're right about that 3 week to a month sabbatical. Next thing you know, here are these hands. Bitch, who you been fucking?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What happened to the 3 week to a month sabbatical, Pastor? Where's
Mm-hmm.
that at?
Well, and you just brought something to my mind too. That whole when they start accusing you of things,
Mm-hmm.
narcissists are projecting, and so when
Yes.
they're accusing you of cheating, you're damn straight they're out there cheating.
Absolutely.
When they're accusing you of sneaking around, like spending money here or there, you're damn skippy they're sneaking around spending money here or there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to your significant other, especially if you think that he or she is a narcissist, because they're basically when they're accusing
telling
you,
you.
they're telling on themselves of
They're
what
telling
they're
you
doing.
Absolutely. They're
Absolutely.
telling you exactly what they're doing. And all you have to do is wait for them to slip up because it won't be long. Because not long after I put those pieces together, I find my car keys and he was like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "I'm just going to the trunk of my car. This is my car." "Well, what do you need out of the trunk?" "None of your business." So I went out to the trunk and that's where I find this thong.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, 3 week to a month sabbatical, huh? You couldn't even get her funky drawers out my trunk?"
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and and my ex-husband, this was so funny. He kept locking himself in the living room. And I was pregnant, and I was like, what if I need to get a drink of water in the middle of the night? I'm like,
Yeah.
stop locking this. What are you doing? And he wouldn't stop. And so I, would knock on the door, make him open it. And then finally, I was like, I was working like a shift work, and so I didn't have to go to work the next day. And so when he left to go to work, I went in the living room, and I was ransacking the living room looking for what is he hiding?
Mhm.
And this is back when we had, phones that attached to the walls. And I looked at the phone and I was like, oh, he can't be this stupid. He cannot be this stupid. I picked it up, pushed redial, and we were in Germany, and so it was like, kein Anschlag für diese Nummer. And then it said the numbers, and I knew enough German to write them numbers down. Well, he ended up, this is when cell phones were just coming about. It was a cell phone that he had that I didn't know about. But that's how, they will slip, right?
Uh-huh.
And you got to pay attention. And when your spidey senses are telling you that something is off, especially he was a really significant narcissist because I was always being accused of something. And so anyway, pay attention, right? And pick up on it. I was like, okay, let me stop making him open the door, and I'm just gonna ransack the living room and find out what it is.
Yeah, and that's all a part of the rejection cycle of it,
Yes.
right? So, and they get really good at when you hit that stage of victim blaming you.
Oh, yes.
Oh, how dare
Oh, yes.
you pick up that phone
Yes.
and check on me,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
kind of thing. They like to flip that
Oh,
script.
mine was, well, you ruined this Mother's Day gift that I was going to give you.
Oh, yeah.
You can't even make it up. I was like, oh, that cell phone was for me. Right. I must
sorry,
have
but
sucker
that's
and across my forehead. Yes.
Yeah.
Or when
Wow.
he broke my cell phone, see what you made me do?
Yes.
You just had to pick an argument about the money I needed to go and get alcohol. So because of you starting this bullshit ass fight, your phone is broke.
Yeah.
It's always, look what you made me do.
Yes.
Or if you would have just done this.
Yep.
Or
You know.
or
If you could
or
have
if
just
you
kept your
just-
mouth
Yeah, or
shut.
if you just
Right.
could just shut the fuck up for a few moments, you would have your phone.
Yeah, they turn it around and blame you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the impact of that kind of abuse and that narcissistic cycle. Like, what kind of impact does it have on, victims in those types of relationships?
Well, for one, it makes us paranoid to get into another relationship because you lived through this with somebody who you think is supposed to love and cherish you. And like for me, it made me very guarded. I had a very difficult time confiding in somebody that I was interested in dating because I'm like, ooh, if I tell him this, he's going to use it against me. That popped into my head every time I felt like I was going to share something. Don't do it. He's going to use it against you. And that's not a healthy way to live your life.
Well, it creates trust issues with other people too.
Yes.
Like we're already on the fence going back and forth, cycling around over and over in our brain, asking ourselves, am I crazy? But then it creates trust issues, furthers isolation, because then all of the things that they start to tell you about your friends and your family, and how they love you so much, you start to question all the other relationships too, and it makes it really difficult to trust.
It also creates questions of your self-confidence and your abilities, because when you have to go out here and work and take care of yourself or your family or both, and you can't rely on your own instincts or judgment because you think back to the jerk you were with, and I made that decision to be with this asshole. So how can I trust myself to make a valid right turn? And if I make this right turn, am I going in the right direction? How can I trust my instincts to know that what I'm doing is correct? So it shows in your work performance. It shows in your day-to-day activity when you're just trying to live a normal life, but this is a new normal now. So everything starts to become overwhelming and confusing.
Well, and you said think about the impact. Well, let's talk about the kids who were seeing this
Exactly.
in the homes, right? What are they learning? They are learning also the same things that we're learning, but they're learning it through our eyes, right?
Right.
They're learning, man, you can't tell this person something, or you can't trust them to be there when they say that they're going to be there, or to do what they say that they're going to do.
Right.
And then if you try to hold them accountable, they're just going to turn it around back onto you. And so think about what that does for our children as they're growing and they're becoming adults, and they've already learned this back in their childhood, that this is what happens. And some of them are going to learn from it and say, I'll never be like that.
Right.
Some of them are going to learn from that and say, that's what I should accept. And you never know which way your kids are going to go.
No.
And it also creates triggers. Certain scenarios that may suggest that your time is not worth being with, it'll trigger you. I'll never forget when I first went on a date with a guy while I was in Michigan, and it was maybe 2 years after he left, and the guy said we were going on a date. So I said, when? After I get off my second job? Or, no, we could go on a date before you go to your second job. He takes me to KFC, and we go through a drive-through. I was silent. I was silent. I prayed, and I prayed hard on how I was going to respond to that. So he was like, he tried to lean over and give me a kiss, and I was like, I'll talk to you later. And I go to work, and my coworkers are like, oh, I thought you were going on a date before coming to work. I said, me too. So later on, because my car was in the shop, he came and picked me up. And on the way home, I was very silent. And by the time I got to my house, I lashed into him. I let him have it. I said, you fucking call this a goddamn date? Give me your definition of date, you cheap ass. And he was like, I thought we were, a date. We spent time together, didn't we? And your Fred Sanford ass car. I mean, the trunk was so full of random stuff. I felt like I was on the set of Sanford and Son. And I'm like, oh, this is how we spend time?
Mhm.
But it's so sad because
It
then, I
is.
mean, we're supposed to be courted. Where is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yes.
it's
And then because
gone.
I don't know about y'all, but I was pressured to be intimate so quickly into the
Yes.
relationship.
Well, that's a whole
And
part of it
and
with
and it
narcissists.
was I was devalued. It's like I didn't even have the chance to think about, am I okay with this?
Yeah.
When it
Yeah.
was time for me to move, he was there to help me, and he moved right on with me. I was like, I don't remember saying yes to this. I don't even, looking back now, I don't remember saying him even asking me to be with him.
Mm.
It was just like, we're together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Looking back on my proposal,
Yeah.
Exactly.
are you
Yeah.
going to marry me or what?
Yeah.
Who?
Yes.
What was going on in my head that was okay?
Yeah.
Where
And
is
that,
the
Mhm.
we're
that's what
supposed to
they
be
expected.
courted.
Yeah.
That's what they
I
expected.
just don't even
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even
Well, an engagement.
what was going
Mine
on in there.
offered an engagement 1 month into the relationship. I
Yeah.
mean, they want to move so fast.
They
so
do.
fast. Those are the red flags. I see
Yeah.
the red flags now.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
in the beginning, you're just so like they're so good at just making you seem like making it seem like, oh, they love you so much.
Well, and how
you're the
young
one.
were we all, right? I think
Yeah.
age
Right.
has a
Gosh.
lot to do with us not seeing red flags, right? But also our experiences that we've been through, how we can see red flags
Mhm.
better now. But I, yes, I think the same stuff, very quick, very fast on the I love you as well.
Right.
And
Mhm.
that's that part of getting you intimately hooked to them, because a lot of them also know that we as women, we crave that intimacy
Yes.
with our partner,
Mhm.
and they know that if we're going to give our sex to you, that intimacy is also coming along with it. And so that's why they move so fast. How can I get her? I need to hook her so she
Right.
doesn't leave me.
We need to give ourselves time because
Mhm.
time reveals character.
It does.
Yes.
It does.
Time
I like
reveals
that.
character. And if
Mhm.
we give ourselves time, then we will have the opportunity to see what our family and friends see. Because if they can
Mhm.
pick it up and we have the time to see it too, then
Mhm.
we wouldn't get, snared like that.
Well, and also, and this is hard to teach um, to people, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, they just don't like if all of your friends and family don't like your significant other, you may
Mhm.
want to take a step back and evaluate why.
Right.
And if you're hearing the same thing from each and every one of them, then you're most likely you're in a narcissistic relationship and they can see it and they're trying to protect you
Protect
from
you.
it.
Mhm.
Or
But we're so
the
not ready to
flip.
hear it.
We're not.
If he doesn't want to meet your friends
Oh yeah.
and
Mhm.
family,
Oh yeah.
if it's flipped on the other side,
Mhm.
oh, I'll take you around my family all day long.
Hmm.
You mentioned one thing about your family. Well, do we have to go?
Yeah.
How?
Mhm.
Why can't we go next month? Why can't we do this later?
But I think it's also just as alarming if they don't take you around their friends or family. Like a lot of narcissists they're not close to their families anymore because their families are like they've seen them for what they are,
Hmm.
and they don't have friends.
Right.
They don't have like close friends because they ruin those relationships so fast. And people don't want, so if your significant other doesn't have friends that they're close to or
Mhm.
family that they go around and visit, that that's also something to take note of.
And see, for me, it was just the opposite. We went around his parents, his brothers, their wives, children, all the time.
Yeah.
Had dinner with them
Mhm.
all the time. Me and his twin brother became very close friends.
Mhm.
That was my buddy. Bruce was the one who would call me to share his problems with.
Mm.
He had no problems with that. It was outside of that
Yeah.
he had a problem with. If
Mhm.
I had fraternity brothers who were real true brothers to me, he
Mhm.
got jealous.
Oh yeah.
If I
Mhm.
spoke to my male coworkers who were best friends of mine, jealous.
Yeah.
I remember one night, we got into a whole fist fight over my male coworker, and it just so happened this was right before he broke my phone. It just so happened that my male coworker didn't hang up the phone. And all you heard was, motherfucker, you talking about me? Hold up. I'm on my way over there. And then his wife was like, no, no, don't do that. It doesn't have to come to this. It's a whole big misunderstanding. No, and don't you hurt her. It was insane.
Yeah.
And that's when he lost his grip,
Yes.
when it wasn't his paradigm.
Yep.
When it was outside of that, he had no control, and it enraged him and punched me through another wall because of it. I mean, it was Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali that night. And those are behaviors that you seriously have to pay attention to when you're looking at being involved with a narcissist. If he's comfortable with you being around his family, so much so that he wigs out when you're with your people, that's a huge problem.
Well, and it is a generational thing. So if we actually give ourselves the time to be around his friends and families, we will learn who he is.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, we will learn the truth. We'll have the opportunity. But they're on such a fast forward schedule that we don't ever have the opportunity to see it.
And I was fortunate enough to have tea with his mother, and ironically, my partner suffered from bipolar disorder, and so did she. That's where he got it from. And we were having tea, and she was like, "Oh, I just want to let you know, because I really like you. My son's a beautiful liar."
Oh, that's a
That's a huge
yeah.
And my eyebrow went up like I had a Botox. And no, he was outside
behind his back.
Well, because he was outside talking to his father, and I was inside having tea with her, and she was like, because I really like you, so I want you to know my son is a beautiful liar. So just listen to the things he says.
Well, or, if your boyfriend's dad happens to tell him in a text message as a licensed clinical therapist that his son is a narcissist, that should be a red flag too.
Or one time we were out in the backyard with his dad, and I loved his dad. He was just adorable to me. And my ex-fiance wanted me to drink with him, and I said, no, I don't feel like drinking today. Well, why won't you have any of this? I don't want to. And his father got enraged, and like the Lion King came out and said, boy, don't make her drink if she doesn't want to. She's a lady. I'm sorry. That was the first time I ever saw him humble.
Wow.
Well, and a lot of them like to do, because you bring up a good point in my head that I'm thinking of. A lot of them like to, if they've got like issues of addiction or things like that, they like to bring you into it with them. They like to force you into that addiction with them, so they can justify it,
because he was an alcoholic.
I'm glad you said that.
I'm glad you did too.
So true.
He was an alcoholic.
And then there's also the pressure, if that's who they are, there's the pressure of, like them, if you can't say no, because then it creates another problem. So then you end up, I could understand how people become addicts being with addicts.
Yeah, because if you say no to them,
you want to keep
you want to keep the peace.
It really difficult.
You want to keep the peace. And if you say no to them, especially in front of family, it lets family know, what the hell is wrong with my kid?
Well,
did I miss something?
And it embarrasses them, and you're going to pay for that later.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You
will pay
me in front
one
of my
way
But
or
the
another.
first time they always want to rope it in as, this is something special we can do together. And then
Right.
once they hook you into that, they use it against you every time.
Every time. And see, I always said no. So that's when I began seeing the financial abuse. Well, since you won't drink with me, you're going to pay for it. So he would take my bank card and go buy it. Just take it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that financial abuse under a narcissist for a little bit, what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like, so what did you experience with that?
Well, see, I was an easy target because of the abuse that went on in my life before, I didn't know how to say no. That's why like I said, I was just a target. I was easy to convince.
Yeah.
And then because because I wanted to avoid, like the arguments or the fights, I just would say yes. And there were times when, yeah, I did drugs, I drank, because if I didn't go along, then he would turn it around and make me feel like I was judging him. But I was a mother. I didn't want to go home and have to be out partying all night and then come home and then be up. And it was like this never-ending cycle of
I feel
I
you
was
there.
not good enough. How could I be? I was not a good enough wife, but then because I had to say yes, and I'm not blaming. I'm not. I did it, but then there was it also trying to be a mother,
Yeah.
and that frame
And
of mind.
the guilt and shame that comes with
Yes.
that
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
Knowing, and I was
Yeah.
a master. Like I became, it was easy. Like I was in denial, thinking that my kids didn't experience it because they didn't see it,
Yeah.
Right.
but they heard it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got really good at covering it up, at being 10 steps ahead to make sure that he was okay, so that that the kids didn't experience it. But it made it really easy. I can understand how it makes it really easy to become a generational thing.
Yes.
And I didn't. It was hard to say no.
Yeah.
And that's because I was raised with a family. My parents are still married.
Yeah.
They just celebrated 60 years of being married. They still hold hands.
Yeah.
And I thought that when I got married, that was my person. And I was convinced of that, even though it happened so quickly.
Right.
But they're really good at making you think, oh, this is so, I've been looking for this, like they make it about you in that moment, but then turn it around. And
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
all
yeah.
on them.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
No,
Oh,
you're
no,
great.
you did.
You're doing
You
great.
did. Because I understand where you're coming from with that, because my ex-fiance went to work drunk. He expected me to do the same. And I refused to do that because I worked for Wells Fargo. They tested. So I didn't want to jeopardize my job. My job was already being jeopardized by you calling me every hour.
Ugh.
What are you doing? I'm working. The same thing I told you last hour ago. I'm working. And you do know that you're calling an extension that's recorded. Well, I just want to know what you're doing because I need to make sure that you're home by 6. It's 11:30. I don't get off till 5. Leave me alone. Click. 1 hour later. Why are you telling me to leave you alone? Aren't you at work? I just took a break. So go back to work.
So another point, not recognizing boundaries or respecting them.
Yes.
Keep going.
Yes.
That's
And
a really good point.
and that's a gargantuan point because they will fight you tooth and nail on invading your space.
Yes.
The
So it's
moment you
easier to
say
give in.
no
Yep.
to not invading, to protecting your person, then it's on. So that's why that's another way of losing your sense of self, because you're so tired of fighting that you say, F it, I'll just let them do what they want.
Yeah.
Like a kid.
Well, and in my experience too, the isolation and stuff was like severe. He wanted me at home. He didn't want me working. He wanted the kids at home. He wanted them homeschooled. Things like that. And he would push for that, but yet he would work just enough to, well, a lot of times he didn't even totally keep us afloat. I'd have to ask for help from family members, right? But he wouldn't work enough to get us out of that level, because it was easier to keep us all there and keep me manipulated into the situation and
Absolutely.
financially, dependent upon him, because there was no money extra, right?
Yep.
So there was nothing extra to leave. I was scrounging for electricity and diapers and, doing things at home to make money. But then that would get used against me.
Well, see,
So-
Tara, that was his ultimate goal. He wanted me to get fired
Mhm.
so I could be at home, so he'd have full access to my car, so that he can go around and have his affairs too, and say that he's working 2 jobs, which he, in hindsight, he was. He was, he worked as a loan officer during the day. He preached on the weekends and he was a hoe at night. So he technically had three jobs.
Yeah.
So, and he needed my vehicle to perpetuate the persona.
Well, I get that too, because when I finally did break down and went, no, I'm going to go get a job so I could benefit, my children could benefit from that. That's what he went and did. He went and cheated while I was gone at work all the time.
Well, see, and the points that you were bringing up, Tara, that's how a lot of narcissists control their victims.
Right.
They won't let them get a job. They make them 100% financially dependent on them. So even when you get to the point where you're like, I need to leave this situation, it's not healthy for me, it's not healthy for my kids, you don't have any money to leave.
Exactly.
And so you're trapped in that very toxic environment. Your kids are trapped in that very toxic environment, and it is financial abuse, because he probably wasn't even giving you money to put gas in a car.
No, he only had one car. I couldn't have a car.
So, he's making sure that you're there. He's making sure that you have to stay there, trapped in that situation. My very best friend, she was in a situation like that. The power would get shut off. She was at home with the kids, and the power would get shut off because he refused to pay the power. She's like, if you just give me the money, I'll pay the bills. He wouldn't let her pay the bills.
Yeah,
And so she's sitting at home with no electricity in a house with 3 kids and another one on the way.
And my situation was just the opposite. He didn't mind paying my car note. He needed my car. He didn't mind paying the light bill. He needed my electricity. My house was the other hideout spot.
But
so
then I bet
that.
he used that against you, though, because he paid for it.
Oh, of course he did. Then another thing that he would do is he would take my spare keys and hide them.
Oh.
So it becomes, let's see how I can keep her paranoid. You'll never guess where I put your keys. So he didn't want me to find the spare set of keys so I can go get my car, because I had my license plate memorized, but I had no phone. You broke that.
Yeah.
So you feel sorry for me, so you leave your cell phone with me so that I could talk to your brother. And that actually worked out against him.
Well,
it's a pine needle.
You're
good. I thought it was a moth.
Did you all see the
dangerous sitting?
Yes, the butterfly that was flying through. But I remember.
Dangerous sitting in the tree.
Exactly.
We're in nature.
That's why I'm sitting over here, so I don't start.
Yeah, so don't come out on there. But I was going to say is I remember having only $10 to our name and the baby needing diapers.
Yeah.
And sending him to go get diapers, and he comes back with a stack full of comic books.
Oh, good Lord.
And then tells me to go get some money from my grandparents to get diapers for my daughter.
Or he'll tell me when we ran out of food, I'll call my brother Charles. He'll go pick us up some groceries. It wasn't his brother Charles that was out there, because while he was out there talking to his brother, it was another woman pulling up with groceries.
Yeah.
Charles sure did have a
meaning Charlotte.
I was going to say Charlie. Charlotte.
No, that's
Charlotte.
Oh God.
But it is easier to, they love to isolate, but they make it difficult to work.
Yes.
Because then there's the, calling all the time. I was followed. Are you really where you say you're at?
Oh,
yes.
I was too.
Yes.
Of course I am. I'm, but still.
Well, in mine, I worked in a male-dominated environment, being in the military, and he would, I saw you talking to so-and-so. Why were you talking? Because he's my coworker. I have to talk to him.
Exactly.
I saw you riding in the, yes, we had to drive to the motor pool. And he knew this because he was in the military.
I was in military too, and it was really
difficult. It was ridiculous. I'm like, these things. And so
I can only imagine if I were in the military having to deal with the asshole I had.
Oh, Lord, I know.
Oh, man, I don't know if I'd even be alive today.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
yeah. And then, you get pressure from people all around you. in the military, I had a chain of command asking me, well, do you really want to do this, press charges against him? Because you know what that could mean. Well, that could mean that I'm holding him accountable. Yes, I know.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was difficult all around, but just the fact that I couldn't coexist with my coworkers without having it
It's really
thrown in my
difficult.
face,
Yes.
I
Yes.
was like, come
So it's
on.
easier to be for me. It was easier to be at home, and
Yeah.
then I thought that being at home that I was able to, at least make it safer. What I thought,
Mhm.
No,
but
Yeah.
it gets worse.
I had to make everything perfect
Well,
all the time.
Yeah,
you're
which
thinking,
makes it worse
and you're
for
thinking,
you.
okay,
Oh, it was so stressful.
if I do
Mhm.
this, then he'll be okay.
Exactly.
He won't be so insecure in
And
our
then we wonder
relationship.
why we end up with perfectionism, like like why
Yes.
we're insecure to the point where we're always, because it's never enough.
Or
It's
we're
never
them.
good enough.
We
Yeah.
are never
analyzing.
enough for
Yep.
them. No,
Mhm.
and it's easy to get that mentality. If I can do
But
this,
I think
if the
that's
tortillas are warm enough,
That is
well,
so
and I
know?
think that that's
true.
also how I got suckered into marrying my ex-husband, is because I was like, okay, he's insecure about things, and if I marry him and show him that I really love him, then he won't be insecure anymore, and it'll give him the confidence to know that I'm here and I'm in it with him.
Right.
Whew, big mistake in that thought pattern, but young and
The
dumb, right?
overanalyzing is what became a huge habit for me.
Mhm.
I'm constantly overthinking,
Mhm.
constantly strategizing, constantly saying, you know what, if I do X, Y, and Z, and if I put this over here and over there, then we'll have a peaceful night.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
if I organize
Yes.
this in this way and I do this, that, and the other,
It's
then
exhausting.
It is.
maybe
Yeah.
I won't have to have a conversation with him.
Right.
Something
Yes.
to protect
Exhausting.
me.
It
And what
becomes
it does, it
stress.
makes you tired.
The
Yes.
Yeah,
It really
and it
does.
becomes more than exhausting.
Yeah.
Eventually, you are in a constant state of trauma
trauma.
to the point that you develop this PTSD
Yes.
with
Yep.
certain incidents. I know for me personally, he would do things like he would come into the kitchen, and while I was cooking, he would see something, he would check the ingredients, and if there was something that he didn't like in there, he would take the whole pan, dump it into the trash, and say, make something else. And the trauma that went on with that, I didn't even realize how traumatizing that was till I remarried, how much PTSD was associated with that.
Agreed.
Because every meal the first year that we were married, I was constantly like, oh, is he going to like it? Am I going to have to throw this out? Is he going to come in here and like, and you live in that panic and that
Agreed.
And for me,
state.
it was the
Agreed.
lack
Yeah.
of sleep. I already had sleep
Whew.
issues, but being with my ex-fiance, I was afraid to go to sleep at night because I would wake up to random acts of violence. His foot would be on my rib cage with a knife at my throat, or I would wake up with his arm around my neck, or I would hear him walk around because of his stuff, and that's where I would crawl to the bathroom and just stay there until he went back to sleep, and then I would come back out of the bathroom and try to sleep again. I actually had to forge patterns of sleep just so I could get up at 5 in the morning to go to work because I had to be there by 8.
Yeah.
So the sleep, the nights for me were the worst. It was warfare at night.
And then if we're not being, if we're not in a healthy relationship, and then we're not healthy and our mind's not healthy, then everything suffers. Our health suffers, our work suffers, our family suffers, everything suffers. And like with the PTSD, I completely understand that. The other day I went to look in the fridge. My husband now he loves to cook. And thank God, because I remember those words, cook something. And I love to bake, but I do not like to cook.
Yeah,
There's a
I
lot
don't
of
either.
and I was a cook
I
in
don't
the
like
army. I'm
cooking
sorry.
either.
Yeah,
I was a cook
I
in the
don't
army,
like
and I
to
still don't know
either.
how to cook. But
Yeah.
the other, and this, I mean, it's been a long time, almost 16 years. And I looked in the fridge. My husband was out of town. I was just going to make something for my daughter and I, and I could feel the anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to make? Even all of this time later.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah, so let's touch on how we break the cycle. How do we heal from this?
education.
That's
I
A
think,
start,
like,
yeah.
for me, it actually took me finally giving in and going to therapy
Right.
for myself,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, I mean, I'm a very independent and strong-willed and hard-headed person. But for me to say, why do I keep picking the same type of guy over and over again?
Mhm.
What is wrong with my picker-outer is broken, and I need to work
I
on
like
me
we need
to
to have
get
shirts
it
made.
fixed.
Picker outers.
Yes. And so I went to
I don't know how to
therapy.
choose.com.
But I went to
Or
therapy
is your
and
picker outer broken?
I started like learning how to identify red flags in a relationship and
Mhm.
in learning to keep and set and keep my boundaries. So if I am not okay with, and this is, I'm just going to use a basic boundary. If I'm not okay with a guy who smokes, if I see you smoking, I'm not even going to like attempt a relationship, right?
Right.
The same thing with behaviors. If I'm not okay with the way that I just heard you talk to that woman, I'm steering clear of you.
Right.
We're not. I'm not like. I'm not interested in having a conversation with you as a friend, let alone an intimate partner, right?
Mhm.
Um, so being able to identify those red flags and knowing what my boundaries were and sticking to my boundaries. Once I learned that it made things so much better and so much easier. But it took a long time. It really did. It took a long time for me to get to that point where, and it was through therapy,
Right.
Right.
where I could do that.
What about you, Midori? What kind of tools did you find helpful for healing?
I found support groups. Celebrate Recovery was one of them.
Mm.
I began going back to church, and I developed a support system through, actually, it was amazing, by being in the choir. And the women in the choir were older, and I'll never forget one of the ladies, her name was Helen. She was so spunky. Like, she would always grab me after practice. Come on, girl, we're going for coffee. Like, yes, ma'am. And I'll tell my grandmother, see you at the house, Grandma. Going with Helen for coffee. And my grandmother would just be tickled because she knew she was my rock when I escaped. And even when he stalked me and followed me to where I was, and he showed up at my grandmother's house on Christmas Day, I was in such a panic. I didn't turn on my fight meter until I heard my grandmother say, "Where's my bat?"
The good old bat.
And my uncle, who was completely inebriated, God bless him, he was like, "Mama, you can't see your bat, but I know where it is." We got this, okay? And so my family was very instrumental in getting him away. And I love them to life for that. But it was church for me. It was slowly, because church helped me slowly reconnect to myself. And then it was therapy when I began noticing at work how I would have these fits of rage. And when I would ask for simple things like a couple of days off extra, because I worked for my vacation time, I worked for my PTO time, and to be told that I can't use it. The fuck you mean I can't use my goddamn PTO time? Oh, I broke a headset. That's company material. In front of my supervisor. Oops. I need help.
Yeah.
I need lots of help. Midori needs tons of help.
Well, and that spiritual connection is so important because you lose it
Yes.
in that identity, right? Don't you think so?
Oh, yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
do.
Absolutely agree. And I will say this, being in a relationship, I look back and who I am now, I see her, but he would not allow me to be her.
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is honestly the
Suffocates
foundation
you.
of who I am.
Yeah.
I
You know,
was
and I
only
fought
allowed
to
to be
become
her
her.
on Sundays when he preached.
he tried to like, it's like they need us to feed off of.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's something that they admire about us.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
they want to
Shut it down.
They want to, yeah. What is it when you turn off the
They
light?
want to quench
Flip
it.
of the-
Yeah.
flip of the
Like
light
snuff
switch.
it.
Snuff it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Like for me, it wasn't until I was outside, like until I left.
Yes. Yes.
At the end of the relationship, it took broken bones for me to finally leave. And thank God that I had the opportunity, that it happened that way. And it was not until I was at a shelter, and that's why I said education,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I had no idea what domestic violence was. Like I said, I was raised in a good family, and I didn't understand it. But as they started to, teach me what it was, that these are
Yes.
the red flags. I didn't see them in the relationship, but then you're already developing that PTSD mind.
Yeah.
You're in that frame of mind. So as I started to learn, we learn looking back.
Yeah.
We from our when we look back on our experience, then we're like, oh, I see the red flags. Oh my gosh, girl, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
But we don't see it while we're in it.
Mm-mm.
But it was education for me.
Mhm.
And that's why I think it's so important for us to do what we're doing and educate.
But you know what? You bring up something about patterns, about family patterns, and that's what also helped me in my healing. It was something my uncle said to me that made me look at my trajectory from a whole different lens. He said, "You're so worried about being married and having kids because, I hear your dad and I hear my brothers talking about wanting grandkids. But look at it like this. Look how many times your father was married. Look at how many times he married.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a fuck if you don't ever marry. Do not sacrifice yourself to a dog just so you think you would have a title.
Yeah.
Be by yourself. And if that means you're the only one in this family who never got married, you just did something different.
So true.
For once, you did something you wanted to do because of you. Not any of us. Not any of us. Because I'm going to tell you something. I won't love you any less if you don't ever get married or if you don't ever have any kids. You're still my niece, no matter what."
That's a good uncle.
And he's gone now, but my Uncle Terry, that was the best conversation I ever had with him. He said, "You promise me you don't settle, because the moment you settle, that's when you just sacrificed yourself."
I think that's good advice to this younger generation coming up. Don't settle.
Don't
Be
settle.
yourself.
Be yourself.
And don't let anybody take that away from you.
Know your worth.
That's right.
And when you find yourself in a relationship where you don't feel like you can be yourself and you have to walk on eggshells
Right.
because you can't be yourself, that's
Get
a
out.
huge red
Yes.
flag that really, you're probably in a relationship with a narcissist at that point.
I won't even say red flag. I'll say these two words, just like the movie: get out.
Well,
Yeah.
and we have to give
Yes.
ourselves time. We have to,
Yep.
the longer we stay, the more we see who they really are. The longer I stayed in the relationship, the less I saw of the person I fell in love with.
Oh, yeah. The person that I fell in love with disappeared.
It was a lie.
Yes, it was
It's
a
a
lie.
facade.
It was a
It was
beautiful
all
lie.
a
It
beautiful
was a
lie.
beautiful lie.
It was
Yes.
a beautiful lie.
was.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And that's what I was saying, like at the beginning. They're so gifted in that manipulation. We are manipulated into believing that there's somebody else, and you almost have to mess with my microphone. You almost have to mourn that person that never was.
That never
Exactly.
Because
And
you're
you-
always
yes,
thinking,
yes,
like, why can't I
yes.
get that person back? Because they don't exist.
No.
Right.
And you
They
also
don't.
have to mourn the decision you made.
Yes.
Because
Mhm.
you
have to
you
forgive
made
yourself.
a decision
Yep.
based off of false information.
Mhm.
And I say that to these women all the time. Do not bang yourself up for making a decision based off of the information you were presented. Know
Yes.
that information was false.
Yes.
Mhm.
It was false.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, and we love them for who they were, but we continue to love them despite
Yes.
You know, that says a lot. I think that we have low self-esteems because of the relationships, but it says a lot about our hearts that we were willing to stay there despite I was willing to love him through his problems.
Yes.
I was willing to love him through his brokenness. But when the tables were turned, he would have never loved me through mine. On the contrary, they were weapons that he used against me and continued to break me over and over and so then I still managed to love him even though I didn't love myself.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and when you come out of those relationships, like you were talking about you got to allow your time to grieve and to mourn, but also recognize that the relationship that you've started out thinking that you want, even before you've met this person, right? That you still have the ability to attain that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of the person you are.
I think the three of us that have remarried, and Midori, you're going to get there one day.
In the name of the Father and
the three of us sitting right here that have remarried, each one of us has a husband who treats us like a queen, who loves us unconditionally, who doesn't ask us to do things that's out of our character or that we don't want to do, who understands and is patient and kind with us.
And loves us through the broken places.
Yes.
And because that's what love is. Love is patience. Love is kind. Love does not hurt.
Amen.
Yes.
1 Corinthians 13.
That's right.
So after coming out of a relationship, there is hope. But coming out of the relationship, we need to give ourselves time when we go into new relationships.
Yes.
We need therapy.
Yes.
We need education. We need all of those things. We need our faith.
And you also need self-care.
Self-care.
Yes.
All of those things need to be put into place so that we can get back to who we were because they tried to snuff us out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Snuff us out as people.
Snuff out
our light.
Yes.
And snuff out our abilities. Like and the thing of it is that they wanted to take the remnant of that snuff and put it in a bottle.
Carry it around
and
them.
carry it around them.
Like it's theirs.
Yeah, like it's theirs. And we don't have any copyright.
It was never theirs.
Yeah.
But you know what? But that light is Jesus. And they can't take that.
No.
Yeah, they try to hide our light under that bushel, right? It's time to lift that and just be the light.
That's right.
Yes, we are beautiful and we can be the light.
Or just take a match and
That's
build one big ass fire and say, shit, this is me.
Yeah, that's right.
Look out, bitches, it's me.
Oh, with that being said, I think this is a good place to end it. So,
Yes, I think so.
But thank you for being a part of our podcast. Look forward to our next podcast next month. And look us up on our website and Facebook and Instagram pages, BTSADV or Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence.org. And please, feel free to donate and help support our great programs that we have. And we appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.